When Tyler Henry Collowin, known to the world as the Hollywood medium, first picked up a pen to scribble symbols in his notebook, he was not trying to contact the dead. He was a quiet, introverted only child, growing up in the agricultural town of Hanford, California. His world was small, safe, and decidedly unglamorous. Yet by the age of 10, his reality had already fractured in a way that no child should experience. He woke up one morning with a certainty that sat heavier than any nightmare his grandmother was going to die. When the phone rang shortly after with the news of her sudden passing, the young boy wasn't shocked. He was horrified. He hadn't predicted the future. He had felt the weight of a door slamming shut in the present. This is the paradox at the heart of Tyler Henry's tragic existence. At 29 years old, he is not a tragic figure because he is poor or unknown. He is tragic because he has spent 2 decades carrying a biological landmine in his skull, while simultaneously serving as an emotional ambulance for the grieving rich and famous. The tragedy of Tyler Henry is that the very mechanism that made him a celebrity, his sensitivity, is the same mechanism that has tried to kill him. From a medical standpoint, his body has been betraying him since birth. Born prematurely, doctors discovered a brain cyst that would shadow his entire life. But physically, the tragedy is straightforward. The deeper, heartbreaking tragedy is spiritual. Tyler Henry has spent his life proving he can talk to the dead, only to realize that the living are far more difficult to save. The isolation began long before the E-network cameras started rolling. As a teenager, Tyler did not fit into the conservative Christian fabric of the San Joaquin Valley. While his peers were worried about prom dates and football games, Tyler was trying to explain to his mother why he could see static around people who were about to die. He has often recounted the loneliness of those years, describing how he became a pariah. Classmates accused him of being a freak. Church elders suggested his ability to communicate with spirits was demonic. Imagine a 14-year-old boy, already terrified by the images flooding his brain, being told by his community that he is in league with the devil. This wasn't just bullying. It was a spiritual abandonment. The tragedy here is that the gift he would later sell out stadiums for was, in his formative years, a curse that robbed him of a normal adolescence. He learned early that knowing the truth about life and death makes you an outcast among the living. If his childhood was marked by isolation, his late teens were defined by a guilt so profound it nearly broke him. Before the fame, before the Kardashians, there was Terry. Terry was Tyler's first love, a friendship that blossomed into a deep, soulful connection. But Tyler, using his ability, sensed a shadow hovering over the boy. He felt, with visceral clarity, that Terry's childhood brain cancer would return. Unable to process the terror of watching someone he loved die, Tyler did something he has admitted haunts him every day. He distanced himself. He pulled away emotionally to protect his own fragile psyche. When Terry's cancer did return and took the young man's life, Tyler was left not just with grief, but with the corrosive acid of survivor's guilt and the shame of abandonment. He didn't just lose a loved one, he lost the time he could have had with him. This is a unique tragedy of the medium. The foreknowledge of loss didn't help him prevent it. It only robbed him of the joy of the present moment. At 19, Tyler Henry became a phenomenon. Hollywood medium catapulted him into a stratosphere of fame that most psychics never reach. He sat across from Amber Rose, Boy George, and Jamie Lee Curtis. He delivered messages that made the stoic weep. On the surface, it was the dream a small-town boy rubbing shoulders with the elite. But the tragedy deepened. Tyler became a repository for the grief of strangers. Every episode required him to reopen the wounds of death. While the world saw the magic, Tyler felt the exhaustion. He has spoken about the hangover of a reading, the days of fatigue that followed channeling intense emotion. He was a 19-year-old kid, barely old enough to vote, carrying the dead children, dead parents, and dead spouses of Hollywood on his back. He became a commodity of consolation. The tragedy is that his success depended entirely on the persistence of other people's pain. Perhaps the most shocking twist in Tyler Henry's short life is not about a ghost, but about a kidnapping. When his mother, Teresa, took a DNA test, the results unveiled a horror movie script. The woman Tyler had always called Grandma Stella Gordy Nestle was not his biological grandmother. In a revelation that made national headlines, the family discovered that Stella had allegedly abducted Teresa from a hospital as a newborn. As if the abduction wasn't devastating enough, the truth about Stella's fate was even darker. She was serving multiple life sentences for the torture and murder of 2 people. Tyler, the man who reassures celebrities that their loved ones are at peace, discovered that his own lineage was rooted in violence and kidnapping. The irony is cruel. He could supposedly connect with any spirit in the cosmos, yet he had no idea that the woman who raised his mother was a murderer and an abductor. The tragedy here is the failure of his own gift when it mattered most, leaving him feeling like a fraud in his own living room. While wrestling with family secrets, Tyler's physical body was crumbling. The brain cyst he was born with led to hydrocephalus, a dangerous buildup of fluid on the brain. Just as his career was peaking, he underwent emergency brain surgery. The procedure saved his life, but it was merely the first act of a medical nightmare. He later suffered a spontaneous collapsed lung, a terrifying event that left him gasping for air, hospitalized for weeks. Doctors found severe air leaks that refused to heal. Then, as if the universe wanted to test the limits of his resilience, doctors found a tumor near the center of his brain. At 29, Tyler Henry has undergone more brain surgeries than most people endure in a lifetime. He has looked his own mortality in the face so many times that death has become less of a mystery and more of an annoying neighbor. The tragedy is stark. A man famous for speaking to the dead keeps almost joining them. Every headache, every scan, every hospital visit is a reminder that his medium's body is a fragile vessel. What makes this narrative beyond heartbreaking is the intersection of these crises. Most people deal with one trauma at a time. Tyler Henry has dealt with them in a pileup. While recovering from brain surgery, he was expected to perform readings. While processing the fact that his grandmother was a convicted murderer, he had to smile for the cameras. While grieving the loss of his first love, Terry, he had to sit stoically while celebrities cried about their breakups. There is no sabbatical for the psychic in the public eye. The industry demands production. The tragedy of Tyler Henry is that he has never truly had the space to heal. He is a healer who is bleeding out. Furthermore, there is the tragedy of authenticity. Skeptics argue that cold reading and psychological manipulation explain his work. Believers swear he is a prophet. But Tyler lives in the uncomfortable middle. He has admitted that he doesn't control the gift, it controls him. Sometimes he gets nothing. Sometimes he gets everything. This lack of control is a tragedy in itself. He cannot turn it off to rest his brain, and he cannot turn it on to save his own family from secrets. He is a slave to a radio frequency he never asked for, picking up static from the other side while struggling to hear his own thoughts. At 29, Tyler Henry is no longer the teenager in skinny jeans on E. He is a young man who looks tired in a way that makeup cannot hide. His eyes carry the weight of thousands of deathbed conversations. He has written books and starred in a Netflix series Star Life After Death Star, trying to prove that his work is about healing, not showbiz. But the tragedy persists. He is trapped in a paradox to remain relevant. He must continue to commodify the afterlife. He must continue to sit in chairs across from crying people and deliver the hard news. He cannot retire, because this isn't a job. It is his neurological reality. Perhaps the most heartbreaking element is the silence of his own home. Tyler has expressed a deep desire for normalcy, for love, for quiet, for a life where he isn't the freak or the miracle. But his body is failing him. His past is a crime scene, and his future is uncertain. He is 29 years old, facing the possibility that the tumor might return, that the lung might collapse again, or that the next impression he gets might be a premonition of his own end. In the end, the tragedy of Tyler Henry is not that he can see death. It is that he has seen too much of it too soon. He lost his grandmother as a child, his first love as a teen, and his peace of mind as an adult. He carries the ghosts of Hollywood on his shoulders while dragging the chains of his own family's horrific secrets. We look at him and see a psychic. We should look at him and see a survivor. But survival is not living. And right now, Tyler Henry is a 29-year-old man trying to convince the world he can speak to the afterlife while desperately trying to hold on to his own. That is not a gift. That is a tragedy of the highest order.